Maryann Dybiec, and Attorney Eric Cherry. How you doing, guys?
Great, Larry. Glad to be back as usual.
Nice to see you, Larry.
Good to see you too.
And today, our special guest. Well, first we have to say sorry, Todd couldn't be here today. He has family health issues. But we do have attorney David Bartos with us today. And I met him in juvenile court, and that's where he practices a lot. But I'm going to turn it over to David and let him tell you what else he practices besides juvenile law. David?
Thank you, Maryann. Well, I've got a practice. It's out of Rocky River, Ohio. We do Cuyahoga County, Lorain, Lake County, Medina. We generally have a practice that mainly deals with juvenile court and domestic law. We do have attorneys that deal with bankruptcy, criminal law, a lot of abuse, dependency, neglect cases with the county, and just kind of a general practice, but mainly juvenile court and domestic law, dealing with custody.
Somehow all of those kind of fit together anyway. You could go through a divorce, you might have to go through bankruptcy, they kind of all tie in together, child support, supervised visitation.
Yeah, we do a lot. We do a lot of the divorces, and it's surprising how many cases, even with domestic law, that they wind up in bankruptcy court getting rid of debt. And you're going from two households, or one household with the joint income and one mortgage, one gas bill to two, and it's a big jump.
It is. It's a big
jump.
change, right?
But as you were saying about the supervised visits, that's a very touchy subject. In juvenile court, there's a lot of, well, as you know, the mother, if they're not married, is automatically the custodian of the child. If you're not married, that's it. The mother has custody rights.
Yeah, that's current Ohio law, but we're working on changing that.
Well, yeah, the fathers basically don't have any rights whatsoever unless they go to court and do that. And a lot of times, they stay out of the picture, so they have an agreement with mom. You don't go after child support, and I won't go after visitation.
That is so funny. You should bring that up. You don't even know how many men will come to our office and their children are 6, 7, 8 years old, and I'll ask them that question, and they'll say, I was afraid to go for my parental rights because then I'd have to pay child support. Which I'm not sure I have much to say in response to that, but that is a topic that comes up a lot.
That's somewhat true, but you're going to have a child. Comes responsibilities with that.
Again, that's
you
why
just
I
don't
don't
get
say a whole lot.
You don't get the benefits of getting to see your child and then not have to pay child support to help raise it. But
a lot of the fathers or the non-custodial parents, maybe they're not fathers, will tell me, well, I don't pay child support, but I pay for the schooling, I pay for the shoes, I pay for the clothes. They all have different reasons why they didn't do it. But again, that's a big problem, is that the fathers are not applying for their parental rights when the children are small enough.
Well, if you go a long time without seeing your child, and then you're like, well, unfortunately, a lot of times the guys, the dads get a girlfriend, and the girlfriends start pushing, well, why don't you see your child? Why? Because they're thinking, well, if I marry you and I have children, are you just going to be a stay-away dad? Why aren't you visiting with your child that you have now? So then they go and apply. And then, if you haven't seen your child, the first thing, as a defense attorney, if I represented the moms, it'd be like, there should be supervised visits. This child doesn't know you from Adam.
And the courts would usually agree with that.
Yeah,
right?
and they'll order a supervised visit schedule with either Safe or Sound, or there's an organization called Garrett's Supervised Visit Program. Garrett's
Thank you for remembering that.
Supervised Visits Program, and both of those places have a good program. Right now, Safe and Sound is very busy. There's a backlog, and recently I had somebody that did that, and there was like a 2.5 month, 3 month wait for a very limited schedule. Like, okay, you can have Wednesday from 7 o'clock at night to 8 o'clock at night, or Saturday from 3 to 5. And sometimes it's just difficult to get in. If I'm on the mom side and she's mad at the guy, it would like, okay, yeah, Safe and Sound, Your Honor, and then it's still another 2.5, 3 months before they'll even get visits. But the Garrett's Law Supervised Visit Program, they do off-site visits as well, and both organizations do a great job of doing the supervised visits, and they do like a summary of the visit, how things went, what the dad or the parent did with the child, how discipline went, how playtime went, how the dad dealt with a child that didn't want to be there, because a lot of times they don't. So children,
we see that a lot.
the children sit down and they're like sitting across from the guy with somebody sitting off in the corner watching the whole thing, and they're like, "Who the heck are you? If you're my dad, that's fine, but I don't know you."
Yeah,
You know, can we watch TV? I want to play video games.
So Attorney Bartos, if I may ask, the way you described that particular kind of supervised visitation, it sounds to me like what has been characterized to me as reunification efforts. Is there any difference between that and a supervised visit that would deal more with an abusive or potentially dangerous parent?
Good question.
There is and there isn't, and it depends on who the parent was abusive to. If there were times when it's abusive to the mother, it's not as, well, there's a couple different things. The visits itself usually are close to the same, but the lead up to the visit is sometimes completely different. You know, the different organizations have different entrances that the parents go into. If mother's dropping off the child, they would have the mom drop off the child at a different time. Let's say the visitation started at 12 o'clock.
So like
They would have the mom show up at 11:30, and the parking lots and everything are videotaped, and then dad would show up at the regular time that the visit was supposed to take place, and he'll show up from the front of the building, and they'll make sure the mom has left, and when dad gets there, so there isn't any contact between them. If the abuse was towards the child, there might not be supervised visits for a long time until different things. I had a case where there was allegations that the dad was physically abusing the child, and there was criminal charges pending. And you know, when the criminal charges are pending, there's usually a no contact order between the kids and the parents or the father to begin with. So there wouldn't be any supervised visits until that cleared up. And even that becomes difficult, because if you have a child that's been physically abused by the parent, they don't want to see them. They don't want to be anywhere near them. So that becomes difficult. But in that situation, there probably wouldn't be much supervised visits.
Understood.
And can I ask a question? In a case like that, would the court order any FaceTime at all, or simply put the family into a program with counseling to get the child to a point where the child might want to see the parent?
Well, it depends on a lot of things. One, if the parent is found guilty or there's strong evidence of it, there would be some counseling and therapy that would probably take place prior to them meeting together face to face.
Well, what I mean by FaceTime is like the internet, like would the court maybe order, isn't it called
Like Skype?
Yeah.
Like Skype?
Skype.
Usually not till at least they've had some type of counseling or therapy on how to deal with the situation, if there was physical abuse between the parent and the child. And it really depends on what type of abuse too. I mean, I had a case where it was a boy, 16 years old, was hit by the dad with a belt because he was smarting off and went after the mom. So he went after a kid with the belt to discipline him, left some severe marks all over his body. You know, that's one situation where it's just like, yeah, maybe some FaceTime would be appropriate, but then some counseling, and you know, dad would get some anger management or domestic violence therapy, that he went too far with the discipline. The child, you know, sometimes like, yeah, I screwed up, I was back talking, mom. So those situations are a little easier to do, but when there's like sexual abuse or something like that, probably not much at all for a long time until everybody got therapy or counseling.
What sort of circumstances would you think supervision of visitation would be appropriate when there was allegations of abuse between the parents, but no criminal charges and no extraneous evidence other than one parent's statement?
It really depends on the child. the child is going to have some strong opinions sometimes. I mean, if they don't have strong opinions, yeah, there's usually not a lot of supervised visits that would need to take place. I mean, obviously, if a marriage or a couple's relationship is going downhill, I mean, there's going to be arguments in any relationship.
Sure.
It's just a matter of if the child saw it, how the child feels about the other parent, how much influence the other parent has said, where, you know, if mom has a black eye and she's like, Dad hit me, and Dad saying, no, she was hitting me and I was defending myself. If one parent has sole control of that child in a custody situation, they're obviously going to hear the mom say, no, he was beating me up, a lot more than Dad saying, I was defending myself and she was hitting. So a lot of that stuff has to play itself out in counseling or supervised visits. And you know, the more evidence a parent has that there's been domestic violence, the more likely there's going to be either supervised visits or no supervised visits.
Yeah, because a lot of times I can understand both sides of this issue. I hear women saying that I shouldn't have to necessarily document every single thing that happens to me in a relationship that might be considered domestic violence, but I also hear the fathers too saying that, you know, here I am kind of like pushed to the side and all they have to do is raise an allegation and all of a sudden I have to pay for and deal with supervised visitation when it's my child and there's nothing out there that says that I did something negative to the child. I love my child.
No, correct. I mean, we get a lot of times that happens. That sometimes in divorce, if a woman comes in divorce, they're like, "Hey, listen, my husband has been emotionally abusive our whole relationship," and you know, it's like, well, what does he do sometimes? And you know, they'll tell you, and then it's like, well, you know, what have you said to him? Why did he say that? And then they get all defensive, and I'm just trying to find out when we're doing a divorce, find out exactly, you know, what is the other side going to say? I know what you're saying. It's easy to find out what your client says.
Sure.
But it's not so easy to say, what is this guy going to say?
I think we have a caller. Okay.
Hey, caller, go right ahead.
Hello, you're live.
Go ahead, caller. Go ahead.
Question. What happens if a dad is paying support but the mother won't give visitation because she has a boyfriend and she doesn't want him to know he's not the father?
Did you hear that?
I didn't hear
Hold
that.
on. Let me raise your volume up a bit. Okay, I'll try it again.
Okay.
Oh, that's good.
What happens if a dad is paying support but the mother won't give visitation because she has a boyfriend and doesn't want him to know he's not the father?
Gentlemen. There you go.
Doesn't want the boyfriend to know?
My first
Yeah.
first advice would be the gentleman that's paying support and not getting visitation is you're going to have to file.
Yeah.
You're going to have to file in juvenile court or domestic court, wherever you're at, to get visitation with that child. I mean, that shouldn't be placed on the dad because, unfortunately, a lot of people think, oh, it's the dad's right to have visitation. Well, I look at it, it's the child's right. The child has a right to visit with the parent that's going to be the parent.
Well said. Well said.
I learned that from you.
But
I've known Maryann for a long time. And yeah, I mean, it's the child's right to visit with the dad. I mean, it's not up to the mom to say, oh, I'm going to start a issue in my household. And I mean, that's a very selfish thing to do.
Yes, it really is very selfish. But I think that it's a sad day when the father then has to go into court and pay an attorney to get the rights that he already had.
Well, we went over that a little while earlier. Are you saying that there's already a court-ordered visitation?
No, there isn't.
He just pays child support.
If he just pays child support, unfortunately, the dads have no rights. I think you had said something about the rights he already has. Dads have no rights whatsoever
Even if they're paying child support.
Even if they're paying child support, you do not have a right to visit with your child unless there's a court order. Now, ma'am, I'm getting the understanding and I'm getting the feeling, are you calling for your son or a male relative of yours?
No, see, I deal with a whole lot of people. I hear all these stories.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Good
I mean,
question. Thanks for
yeah.
calling.
Yeah, dads have no rights whatsoever to any visitation.
Well, that's crazy.
Yeah.
How can that be? And they help to get the baby. You can't get the baby by yourself.
Well, there's a differentiation between a married couple and a unmarried couple. Just the way the law lays out right now is that if the parents are unmarried, that the mother is the sole custodial. That's provided by statute until father files to establish his parental rights. And, it's fairly easy to do, but you do have to file and get a court order for it. And I would think, especially under those circumstances, at a bare minimum, you're going to end up with a pretty normal, regular visitation schedule, barring any sort of extraneous circumstances that we didn't talk about.
Is she still on the line?
Yes.
Well, ma'am, if you could spread the word for us, this is the main thing, to get the word out there that the dads, you gotta go and get your order for visitation. Even if you're gonna have to pay child support, you should have pride in having a child and being able to support that child and visit. But I wanted to point out, when they do go, there's a couple things that they're gonna have to have in order to file. One is the child's birth certificate. In Cuyahoga County, you can go online to find out where the birth certificate would be, but mostly it's going to be at the Cleveland Municipal Building on
City Hall.
Lakeside, City Hall at Lakeside, and you can get a birth certificate. Even if the dad's not on the birth certificate, you can get a copy of the child's birth certificate. The second thing that you're definitely going to need is a copy of the child's Social Security card. Now, you may not have that. You can go to the Social Security office and you can request it. Usually, if you're not listed as the dad, they will give you a letter saying that you are not, I would say,
Custodial parent.
You're not a custodial parent, so you don't have a right to the Social Security card, but they will give you a letter saying that you're not authorized to have the Social Security card, and that can be used in replacement of the Social Security card when filing.
But keep in mind that this person is already paying child support, so paternity has been established.
Okay.
So there should have been some sort of a SETS number that would have included the establishment of paternity. So there probably is either he signed the birth certificate or that was established through child support services.
That is something actually different.
Sure.
Okay? Child support and being found to be the father is one thing, which you also need, but the birth certificate and a Social Security card are needed regardless of whether you're paying child support, regardless of whether you've been
in order
deemed to
to
be the
file.
father.
I have to question that because I heard a year. Oh, bye, caller.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
calling.
Thank you, caller.
Hey, no problem.
I heard about a year ago that they no longer require the pro se litigants who go through the pro se office to have that Social Security letter anymore. And it was fairly recent, so it was fairly recent.
I have not heard that at all.
Now, all they're requiring in the pro se office is the birth certificate and a child support order if there is one.
And the UCCJ.
But, I mean, you could double check, I could be wrong. This is just what I've heard.
I'll check into it. And
Yeah.
You can make an
You
announcement.
lawyers, I'm sure you all still all do the Social Security cards.
I don't, and it works
You
for
don't?
me. I don't file with the Social Security card. I file with the birth certificate, a UCCJA, and if there's a child support order. And
And
it's never been
sometimes-
stopped.
Just for everybody's knowledge, if you can't afford an attorney, there is a pro se office in juvenile court downtown. They are going to charge you a filing fee if you are not indigent, but just because you think you have to hire a lawyer, don't let that stop you. There are ways that the average person can go and file this. I'm not saying that
Correct.
once you get filed, you're not going to need an attorney, but at least go get your paperwork filed. They will help you. They will walk you through it. It is scary in court. So I believe each child is $150 to file. There's a pro se office. And again, once you get into court, you might consider hiring an attorney, but please don't let the money scare you from filing for your parental rights. Back to you guys.
Yeah.
So we were talking, we brought up child support very briefly for a second there, in the sense that it stops a lot of fathers from filing for them because they're afraid of paying child support. And I liked very much what you said. You should take pride in being able to
Yeah.
support a child and having visitations with the child. Is there a way that through the process of court that a child support amount can be reduced from the state calculation?
Well, there's the new laws that go into effect March 2019. It's going to adjust the child support guidelines.
Yeah.
What we were seeing before is if you have if there's a significant amount of time spent with the child, that the child support order could be reduced. So if you're currently in a child support order and you have a custody or a visitation order, there are going to be more, or it's going to be easier to adjust the child support based upon how much time you spend with the child and how much interaction you have with the child. And that's borne out by actual visitation. I mean, there's people out there that have visitation 4 days a week and they only pick up the child for 2.
Right.
So it's going to have to be proven. It's going to start a lot more litigation.
It is.
There's not going to be any more, with the new Trump tax law, there aren't going to be exemptions anymore for the children. So that was one way that there was a trade-off with the child support, that if, okay, I'm paying this monthly, but I want the exemptions for the children on the taxes, and I get somewhat money back. That's not necessarily going to be there anymore. So it's going to be coming down to mostly how much time you spend with the child, how much interaction you have, how much in the decision-making process you're going to have. So that's going to be a big way to reduce it. They're also, they have the guidelines, or the state legislature back in 1992 developed combined income guidelines. So it would go down a list of incomes, and whatever the combined incomes of the two parents are, that would determine how much support the children should actually get. Let's say the combined income for both parents is $40,000. $40,000 gets divided, let's say, they say for $40,000, the child should get $5,000 a year. If they're both making $20,000 each, that $5,000 basically gets split in half, and so about a little over $200 a month.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's right.
Trying to do my math. So that is being changed up. First, it's the state legislature's not going to be doing those sheets of guidelines. It's going to be left to the Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services. They're going to be periodically reviewing those in each county to determine, income levels, expenses, daycare levels, different things like that. And that's going to be actually on the county responsibility now instead of the state legislature.
Oh, joy.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
I know, right?
Well, as you know, whoever pays child support, there's a 2% poundage, 2% processing fee for every child. So if you're paying $200 a month in child support, you're going to be paying $204 for that child support. So if the guidelines are now in charge of the department that's going to be getting 2%, where do you think that amount is going to go to? So, they're going to raise that up.
And they're going to have more power over emancipation. So, for an example, a mother has 3 children. One gets emancipated. It used to be before, well, it still is now till this is implemented, but the if it was an administrative order, you have 3 children on, 1 drops off, the child support dollar amount drops by 1/3.
Right.
However, now with them being in charge of the guidelines, they will be able to adjust the guidelines when the one child emancipated, because it doesn't necessarily go down by 1/3 or 1/2, or it again, it's all based on income, and it will still be based on income. But there's a lot of parents out there, or custodial parents who raise children who didn't know that when one child came off, you can go back to court and have it reevaluated, and they just took the cut and didn't know any better. And also that will bring in more revenue for the Child Support Enforcement Administration.
Yeah, I mean, Jobs and Family Children, blah, 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 blah.
No, it's
Children's Family Services, they're able to do modifications every 3 years. So there's a lot of different things. They can do a modification every 3 years.
But are they good
without going back to court.
modifications?
Well, the problem with those modifications, they don't necessarily take into child support paying for other children.
There are
There's
lots of
different
mistakes
things.
on
Sure.
administrative orders.
Absolutely.
So note that, everybody. Please note that. If you have an administrative order, have somebody check it. There's a lot of mistakes on administrative orders.
And-
No offense, people.
And you can go back to get adjustment in child support at any time. The problem that a lot of, men were having problems with, and women, is, they go and say, oh, they can't do a modification for 3 years. That's one thing. Well, then you have a dad that loses his job. He gets laid off. He was a steel worker, gets laid off, and he goes to CISA and says, hey, listen, I lost my job. I need a modification. We don't do them for 6 months after you lost your job.
Is that still true?
Yeah. So you go 6 months, and the dad gets 6 months behind in child support.
How unfair is that?
Well, they say, they don't tell them this, but go to court. File in court to
Right.
get your.
See,
right.
that's what I
But
told
they
everybody
just
too.
lost their,
Don't-
they just lost their job. They don't have any, they have to pay child support that isn't modified, and they don't have the money to go back to court. I mean,
Well, ask for a poverty affidavit from the clerk. You're welcome.
that's true.
Because
That is true.
doesn't the law provide that a modification can happen anytime when there's a 10% change in income?
Yes.
Okay, so,
Not administratively, though.
oh, sure, but just go to court.
From the
Yes.
county perspective is you lost your job, and well, we're going to hope you get back to get a job within 3, 4, 5 months, and then we'd have to adjust it again.
Right.
So why don't we just hold on and wait and see if you get another job? And even then, the parents get frustrated and they give up, and then they just get behind.
That's very sad. I think one of the first speeches you and I ever did together talked about this is years ago when they took away the driver's license. Remember when they started that?
Yes.
And we were on our pedestal 20 years ago talking about how when people are unemployed, it should be implemented automatically, or give them something.
Practicing criminal law too, it's kind of amazing how often people fall into that driving under suspension trap, and they just keep driving because they have to.
Yeah, we've
to go
had
to work. And
long
it's-
conversations about that too.
It's so incredibly sad and dangerous,
Right.
and difficult for us that are licensed and insured
Right.
properly. It's not fair for us either. But I can understand their position, and so back when they would do that regularly with people who had fallen behind on their child support, that's not good. It's not going to help them produce income so that they can continue to pay child support in the future. It seems
Right.
counterproductive.
And then
Yeah, it
also
was.
the parents that lose their job and they get behind on their child support because it won't get modified. They're subject to a motion to show cause and then jail time, and then they're fighting that. They have to come to court for that, and they get a job, but then they got to still take time off of work to go into court to battle this thing because they got behind in their child support because they lost their job and CISA wouldn't modify their support orders.
And then if you don't finish it up and you're on a motion to execute, when you're on a motion to execute, I think you told me this story, if I'm not mistaken, that a gentleman was on a motion to execute. He had lost his job, but he was babysitting the child while the mom went to work. The mom went to court with him, begged the judge not to throw the father in jail because he was babysitting her child. So then,
Saving her money.
Right. If he went to jail, she would have to hire a babysitter. So he would put her in that position. And the judge said, basically, I don't care. He's going to jail. And I'm pretty sure you told me
Didn't
that
pay child
story.
support. Yes.
Yes.
I remember
It was a
that.
long time ago. You remember that?
Yeah, it was probably about 8, 9 years ago, but
Yeah,
it's
it was-
still,
yeah.
it's still things.
I think about that all the time. So be careful if you're behind in your child support. The best thing to do is be in communication with your caseworker, if they still call them that over at the administration. Keep in contact with them. That's one way to save face, is just tell them what's going on, and that'll keep them from filing, when they...
The motion to show cause?
Yes, and take your driver's license and stuff like that. That could help if you're communicating. File a motion in court, do whatever you need to do. Don't get behind in child support.
How often do you run into a circumstance where somebody is paying child support and also has custody of the children, or possession, I should say?
Quite a few. They've gotten actually pretty good about that. If somebody has a custody order from court, There's, if you call them up, there's a fax number, and what they'll do, unfortunately, is if you have the custody order, they will suspend the distribution to the mother of the child support. However, they won't stop collecting it until you file to get the support order stopped and to establish one for yourself.
Okay.
So you're stuck there, you're still paying, you have custody of the child, they're still taking it out of your pay, but you have to file to get it stopped and to refund that money, which might take 5-6 months. So this whole time you're paying into child support, you have custody of the child. Now granted, the mom's not getting the money and the money's there, but it takes you quite a while to get the money back.
But at least there is a light at the end of that tunnel?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
I just had a case like that, and I mean, not that I personally, but I knew somebody had a case like that, and it was done exactly how you said, and he didn't have to wait as long as they usually do, so they're getting better at distributing it. But taking that one step farther, do you know of any cases where the custodial parent has custody and the non-custodial parent by court is ordered child support just to even out the incomes, or is that by the wayside long ago?
It's still out there. I haven't had one of those cases in a long time, and actually, I have a case that might be happening too, that I have now. I can't mention any names or anything like that, but yes, it does happen. Sometimes this stuff happens. Mom isn't making a lot of money. Dad's making a significant amount of money, and at the end of the day, and if Dad gets custody, he might have to pay support to Mom to so the child has the same amount of comforts and benefits at the mom's house that he does at the dad's house.
Yeah, that's a rarity.
So, yeah, it is very rare. It's very rare.
I was just wondering if it still happens.
Yes, it's still out there.
Do you ever have any cases like that?
Nope, I have not yet.
Well, heads up in case they come
Okay,
at
that sounds good.
you. Yeah, it happens.
I believe
If there was some advice that I had for dads out there, and I know it's difficult to do, where we don't want the government involved in our lives, where they give moms, and you guys have probably both, where the dads or moms give the other parent money outside of CSEA, where
Right.
they have a support order, and the mom calls them up and says, "Hey, little Joey, little Johnny, whoever, blew out his shoes, and he needs shoes right away, and we need $150 to go buy shoes. I just don't have it." So the dad goes, "Okay, here you go. Here's $150," and it doesn't go through CISA. Sorry, that doesn't get applied to your child support.
Right.
That's a gift. And unfortunately, dads are like, "Well, since I gave her that money, I can't pay the support this month. Shouldn't that be?" Well, no, I'm sorry, you're out of luck.
Can I tell a funny shoe story?
Sure, go ahead.
So,
It's your show,
Yeah.
you're going to either way.
So when I got divorced from the children's father, he always paid his support on time and never had a problem with that. And we also had an agreement that he would buy the children's shoes come fall. So this one fall, and you guys have known my children, they were crazy, 3 boys. Johnny was probably, I don't know, I want to say 11 years old. His dad just bought him a new pair of shoes. So you bring him in the house. We had company that night. We all go to bed. We wake up in the morning. The next morning, Johnny can't find his shoe to go to school.
Dog.
We only found one. So I called his dad because I had no money in the bank. I called his dad and I said, "I know you just bought him new shoes, but we can't find one. I don't know what happens here. We can't find his shoes. Would you mind buying another pair?" And appropriately he said no. So I went out that day, bought Johnny a pair of shoes because he had to go to school. And then I swear it was like 3 days later, my other son came home at like 9 o'clock at night, turned on the ceiling fan, and the shoe flew off and hit him in the head. So,
How did the shoe get up to the ceiling fan?
kids, the kids were hiding the shoes. So
It's ridiculous.
their friends came over, hid his shoe. We couldn't find it. Anyway, that's my funny shoe story.
All right, so is there
I
any
was
way...
expecting a dog to have chewed it up or something.
Dog ate my homework. Is there any way that a person could track non child support, like through the administration, child support payments, like if they were buying shoes or paying for school supplies or something like that, keep receipts so that, and this is, I think, more appropriate prior to the child support order. If somebody were to turn around and ask for like not arrearages, sorry, I'm blanking.
Back care. Back care.
Yeah, back pay.
Past care.
Past care. To show support, if you will, that they've given in the past based on receipts for payments. Is that going to fly in court?
Yes. If you have receipts and all that stuff, yes, that will help. However, who keeps those receipts?
Oh,
I
they
mean,
do. They do.
in my experience, you know,
Yeah, I was gonna
it's
say
like,
not usually.
oh, diapers. You know, when the child's first born, they go get diapers, and I mean, they're brand new parents. They're, I'm
But-
helping raise my kid. I bought diapers. Do I keep the receipts? No.
So-
Especially not after 2 years. I lose them after 5 days.
So it's not considered a gift anymore? I mean, if you have a real tough attorney,
If
they
there's
could
no-
argue that it's a gift. Is that
If there's
still?
no support order, anything that you have paid for the child should go towards eliminating that past care amount. The thing is once an order is in place, I think it's even in the orders, anything paid outside of CISA is a gift. Anything before that, if you have, documentation of what you've provided, yes, that is okay. It's not a gift, it's you're caring for your child and that should be used. I mean, the simplest and easiest way to do things is check. Write a check. Write
See,
down
these are good
on it,
family court secrets
child
for you to
support.
listen to.
Write on your check to the mom, child support for diapers, clothing, formula, whatever. And, that way, if anything happens, those canceled checks, you can get them from the bank. Yes, it would cost you money to get them, but you'd have those canceled checks saying this is what I was paying for and this is what it was for.
Okay, let's wind back a little bit for our listeners who don't know what past care support is. So would it be fair to say that this is what happens when somebody files for custody or parenting orders, say 3 or 4 years into the child's life, and then the mother then, who's had custodial rights by default through the law, says, well, you haven't paid support from day 1 through year 4. Is that what's considered past care support?
Yes, anything that's happened before the actual filing, that there was no court order. Because the way it goes is that child needed to be raised. Mom spent out the money for that child to be raised, and dad should have reimbursed, or should be paying support for those years that there wasn't a child support order. I mean, that's the logic behind it.
Do you
Oh,
still?
yeah. There's problems with it, though.
Do you still have to prove, I mean, I heard this long ago, that the father had to, or the mother, if she's making a claim like that, has to prove that the father was knowledgeable that there was a baby born.
3 years.
Is that the,
3 years.
bless you.
You all right there? The parent, there has to be some type of evidence and proof that the father knew that he could be a father within 3 years of the child's birth to be able to get past care. Now, there's different rules of thumb about that. So let's say that it went 4 years that the father eventually found out that there was a child. Well, there's some places go, no, you don't get any past care to the mother. Some say, well, you get past care up until the 3-year mark, so it's actually 1 year of back support. So that's kind of still up in the air. And there's been arguments made that, wait a second, you had sex with mom. You should have known that there was a possible child that was conceived.
I never heard that argument before, but.
That's in the adoption law. I think it's the worst.
Well, but no, you sit there and go, well, you had sex with mom. How did children get born? You have sex. You should have known that there possibly could have been a child born of that
What if they were
relationship.
both drunk and he got up the next day and
You should have
she
known.
didn't look the way she looked at 7?
You should have known. You could have had a baby. It's your obligation to go back and say, was there a baby? Was there not a baby?
So what happens if you do go back and you ask, are you pregnant? Was there a baby? And the person says no.
Well, then you can say, here, put it in writing. No, I'm sorry, I hit the table. We're not allowed to hit the table, sorry about that.
been going on all day here already.
So yeah, I mean, there's times when, oh yeah, there was a child born, and the parent, mom, this is the biggest one. You can say, oh my God, I see you have a baby that I could be the dad. It's not said like that, but oh, your child's 3 years old, and then the dad sits there and starts going like this on his fingers, going, oh wait, that could be mine. Is that my baby? Oh no. Oh, she's lying through her teeth. She knows it's yours. She just doesn't want you in the child's life.
Right.
So dad goes, okay, great, okay, wonderful, blah, blah, blah. And then you go and winds up being your dad, being your kid, and you owe all this money for back support because you didn't do anything.
I'm so glad I don't have to go through that. If I'm pregnant, I know it's mine.
There's a whole bunch of these. I get at least one or two of these a year. Dad has an agreement with the mom. You don't go after child support. I won't go after custody or visitation or anything like that. I'm out of the child's life. You're paying. I don't visit. Fine. Child is now 17 years old.
Yep.
Mom goes, I'm going to go back and get child support for 17 years.
You really get a couple cases a year like this?
Yes.
Wow.
And guess what happens?
What?
Dad owes the money.
No.
Yep.
No.
Dad owes the money.
But I thought you said we can only go back 3 years.
This isn't a license for moms to go out and do that. That's just a horrible thing to do.
Okay, I'm confused. You said 3 years. They can only go back 3 years.
Well,
But
what I'm
he
saying
can
is
get
the dad knows. The dad knows that he has a child out there.
Okay, so if dad has knowledge that this child, she can get 17 years of back support.
Yeah, the
Yes.
law says that fathers have a duty to provide support. It doesn't list time limits on that. The circumstance he described was when there was a lack of knowledge about the child's existence.
This I'm saying,
Yeah.
dad has full knowledge. Like he
Yeah.
shows up 2 years later or 3 years later, or even if he hears from Joe Schmo's cousin's uncle say, "Hey, Betty had a baby, and I know you were dating her at that time. I don't know if that baby's yours or not." Dad goes back and says, "Hey, Mom, listen, I don't want to visit the child. I won't go custody. You don't go after child support." Okay. 17 years, mom's at child support going, I want 17 years of back support. And that's going to be in order.
Big family court secret here. You guys should pay attention to this. I actually didn't know that could happen.
It happens all the time. I've gotten so many cases where that's come in, and obviously, like the one case I had wound up being, 17 years of back support, and we argue, there's different things you can argue. One, he was self-employed, doesn't have the records to say what he was actually making then, to actually do the child support, because they'll go back year to year to year, put what you were making that year, what she was making that year, and they come up with, you should have been paying X number of dollars this year. This year you made X. Usually that's good if it's a W-2 employee, but self-employed parents, it's very difficult to go back. And usually what winds up happening is that there comes to be an agreement of some kind. Let's say for 17 years, $200 a month, if that's what he was supposed to be paying, that's $2,400 a year, multiplied by 17, 18 years, $36,000. Is that right?
That's about right.
$36,000 a year. Well, listen, let's call it 20. Let's call it 20, and he pays $200 a month until it's paid off. Granted, he'll be paying till the child is like 40 or 50, but still, it's something. And you lose the time value of money too. I mean, obviously, if the child's 17 and he was supposed to pay, $80 back on when the child was born, it's not. It's now that $80 is worth minuscule amounts of what it would have been able to buy back
time.
17 years ago.
Right.
So it works itself out. I mean, obviously not to the best for the dads, but the dads have to be understanding of that.
I have a
from the-
question.
Go ahead.
Say the child turns 18 years old, right? Well, 86, yeah, okay. In any circumstances, can the child go to the parent and collect back child support? Say the child's 17, mom gets an order. Does the child say, hey, wait, this is my money, why should it go to my mom? I want it delivered to me. Does that make any sense to you?
It hasn't happened. I know of one time case that I was involved in that happened, where the money went to the child, but that was such a convoluted fact pattern that I don't think it would ever fly again in the courts today. But yes, there's two different ways to look at it. One, if there was never a child support order, okay, hypothetically, the child could come back and ask for the support on her own, even after the age of 18 up until the age of 23.
That's right.
23.
That's right.
So if you turn 18 and your mom has never applied for child support, you're not bound by any agreement mom may have made, and you can sit there and go and say, I want my child support. And then you're probably on unheard of or unruled upon case law. I mean, that usually never happens.
Yeah, I vaguely remember this came up like several years ago.
The case that I was involved with, that the money went to the child, wound up being, the guy was a musician, and it was basically a one-night stand type thing. And they went back and forth, and the only way it went to the child was because mom agreed. Mom agreed to let the money that it be payable to the child. Otherwise, they say, well, the child was being raised, this is how much money it takes to raise a child. Not how much money did you actually spend, but this is the normal amount that usually gets spent on a child for food, clothing, all of those things. And mom would have paid those out, or would have found a way to pay those out, so she should get reimbursed by the dad. I mean, even technically, a mom could go back after the child actually turns 18, or child support would have really ended, and when the child's 20, go back for past care for the child. So there's a lot of bad things that can happen.
So I guess the cautionary tale for fathers here is you might as well just go ahead and file early on, and perhaps attempt to work out a reduced amount of child support with the other side if you can, and get visitation established, because just because you have an agreement, presumably not on paper, with the mother of the child doesn't mean that it can't come back against you later on and turned around and she blows the whole thing up and gets the money anyway.
Correct.
Yeah, we really learned a lot from you today, David.
Well, I try.
We should have you on more often.
Well, we still got some time. We got 13 minutes?
Yeah, but
Well,
I'm just amazed how much the information we've given out.
There's a new thing that is coming out with the new child support law, and this is changing the subject a little bit, about a reserve. So if you're lower income and the typical order would have been, let's say, $200, okay? There's like a reserve built in now that if you're that low, there's a certain amount that your child support will get reduced. And I don't know necessarily how it's going to play itself out, but it's putting more burden on the mother to find additional money. The idea is, I'm not paying any child support because it's too high. But if my child support was $100, I'd make sure it got paid. So there's this gap that they're trying to figure out what's the best way to actually have money coming in. So like if it's $200 and it's too high, let's say the guy makes $12,000 a year and he's ordered to pay $200 a month.
Yeah.
He's gonna be homeless. Right. So they're building in this little thing to say, well, you're gonna pay less, okay, to make sure you're able to survive and pay child support.
I'll have to play with the calculation before I
Right, so I mean, if you're making $12,000 a year, you're struggling surviving
Right,
on your own.
sure.
Then you're gonna have to pay $200. Well, I can't pay anything because I can't survive. Well, if we made it $100, could you survive and try and make that work? And just to pay something, can you get something in? And so that's what they're implementing starting in March.
Well,
I mean, but it's putting more of the burden on the moms who aren't making much, who then have to deal with the support. But then again, there's a lot of benefits and programs that parents can get if they don't have a lot of money, whether it's health care for the child, daycare vouchers, different things like that, but people don't realize how much it actually takes to support a child. And if you're talking about,
A lot.
if you're talking about, if you do the numbers just for food, $3, 3 meals a day, $3 a meal, it's $9 a day. $9 a day, 30 days in a month is $270 just for food for the child.
That's
I
right.
remember those days, the
Okay?
budgets.
So that $270. Okay, talk about clothes. Child needs pretty much a whole new wardrobe every year because they're growing. So if you're talking about, let's say, 6 pairs of pants, 6 pairs of pants running about $20 a piece, $180. T-shirts, let's say $180. Dress shirts or school clothes, $180. So you're looking at generally about $80, $90 a month or $100 a month. If you go to buy a new winter coat, you're going to be spending $120.
Shoes.
Shoes.
Not to bring that up again.
So you're talking about maybe, on a conservative, $100 a month. So you're up to $390 or $370 just for food and clothes a month.
And that's not counting health insurance, daycare.
Well, we're getting there.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a mom, and she has one child. An apartment for a 1-bedroom apartment, let's say, costs $500.
That's a cheap one.
Well, cheap, I'm just saying, so $500. Okay, so but a same place, for a 2-bedroom place, which you'd be required to have, is another $700. So now you're tacking $200 on, because that's the difference between, if mom was alone, this child is costing for housing an extra $200 for that extra bedroom. So now you're up to 2, 3, 4, 5, 580, 570-ish, just for that.
270.
Healthcare, co-pays, deductibles if you're not on
CareSource.
CareSource. I'm sorry, keep it in the table. CareSource or anything like that. You got the healthcare involved with that. So let's just call it the 580. Let's just call it the 580. Nothing else. Those 3 things. And the minimum order, if you're making minimum wage, full time, both parents, your child support order is going to probably be about just $230, $240.
Right. Yeah, it's not enough. But at the same
so
time,
you're still negative. The moms are still negative money
right.
in that scenario, and you're not talking about, well, the child uses more water, electricity,
The things that they break,
deodorant, toothpaste. All of those things add up, and you're still not talking about daycare. Now, if that mom's required to go get daycare, I mean, you're talking about $200 a month or $200 a week.
Yeah.
In daycare?
per child.
Per child.
And you're sitting there, so you're talking about $900 a month in daycare for a mom to go back to work to make $18,000 a year. Now, in that situation, you might get vouchers. That's why I'm just saying, barring anything else, she's getting vouchers for daycare, all that stuff. The moms are still negative money.
So,
Sports, kid wants to play soccer or football. You're talking about money out of pocket. Track, money out of pocket. And it's so difficult for moms to do that.
Well, any custodial parent. It could be a father who's a custodial parent trying to put all that together.
Correct. But let's be realistic. Moms are the custodians until there's a court order that says otherwise. It's
we can-
usually going to be the mom.
We can make a nice segue into how many fathers are you see getting custody these days?
A lot more.
Yeah, see, here, listen.
A lot more.
A lot more.
A lot
But you
more.
have to try.
Yeah, there's a lot more.
In the last 3 years, 5 years, when have you seen this change?
It's been ongoing. But there's also been a huge shift in dads.
Meaning?
A lot more are filing. A lot more are taking a more active role in their children's lives. For whatever reason.
and
I was going to
very
say, do you
good
have a
thing.
reason or?
Very
For
good.
whatever reason, they're taking a lot more position in their child's life. A lot
Amen.
more shared parenting plans going into effect. And unfortunately, what really trips a lot of things up that dads are getting custody is, right or wrong, moms are used to making the decisions. dads want to be involved. You get a shared parenting plan. And mom says, listen, I got to move, and I'm moving. And I'm taking the kids, and I'm moving. Don't tell dad, or tell dad after the fact that they moved. And the dad is like, what are you doing? You didn't talk to me about this. Shared parenting plan is you're going to discuss any major changes in the child's life with me before you make any decision, life-altering decisions. Change of school, change of residence, medical, all those things. If you're not talking with the other parent to do that, there's a problem. And I see a lot of those cases going where the dad says, she never informed me. And so the courts are going, you know what, you're right. Dad, you're gonna have custody. You gotta make sure mom knows everything that's going on.
And
Mom's moving a lot, you're not, you have more stability. She's not communicating with you with the relationship or what's going on with the child. Yeah,
So when they do have an order, a shared parenting order, always in those orders it says you have to notify the court if you're moving. So I'm assuming these mothers didn't even notify the court that they were moving, because
Correct.
then that would have given the non-custodial parent a chance to fight the move, correct?
correct. The idea is that, hey, listen, this move is going to affect the children. It's gonna affect where the children get dropped off. It's gonna affect what time the children might have to be back, because if it's a Wednesday night visitation and the children are supposed to be with dad till 8 o'clock, and mom moves 20 minutes further away from dad, well, then we have an issue of one, mom's gonna say, I can't drive that far, it takes me an extra 20 minutes to get back. Or actually now it's 40 minutes, 20 minutes there, 20 minutes back. You're talking extra 40-minute drive time. If with younger kids, they gotta get to bed, they gotta go to school the next day. So if you're talking about 8 o'clock at night and mom's taking an extra 40 minutes to get back, they're not getting back home till 9 o'clock to go to bed and get ready, take a bath, do all that stuff, so they're not going to bed early enough.
Yeah, the normal procedure is one parent files the notice of relocation and then it gets served on the other, and then they can file a motion to have the parenting plan reevaluated for the purposes of relocation.
Jazz hands, 4 minutes left, 4 minutes.
A long time ago, I wanted to ask this question, so since we're already talking about shared parenting, we're kind of in that mindset. You mentioned that with the new child support law going into effect, where there is going to be more of a reduction for the split of time between parents. You thought that that would create a lot more litigation.
Yes.
You know, at least in my experience, I would think that that would make it harder to settle cases, because you're going to, oftentimes you're playing the reduction in child support versus parenting time as, you know, the play back and forth. But would one parent make the push for a 50-50 schedule kind of with the intention of reducing child support, and then that would be the reason you don't settle? You see where I'm going with that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The answer to your question is yes, absolutely. It even plays a lot into it now.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of the jurists have just washed their hands of it and said, I'm not getting into trying to figure out how much credit you should get for having the child an extra 2 days. And you're just going to be paying the child support that you're supposed to be paying, regardless of how much time you're spending with the child. Now understand that, I mean, that's a big thing, because even in a non-shared parenting situation, if you've got a daughter and a dad, mom has custody of the daughter, and you get overnight visits with that daughter, where does the daughter sleep? You gotta have another place for her, or dad sleeps on the couch and daughter sleeps in the house. That's plays havoc on someone's life. If the dad gets a second apartment, you're still talking about, or a second bedroom, you're talking about that gap of a single apartment, 500, 2-bedroom place, you're talking about an extra $200.
And like you were talking about before, the
Food.
3 meals a day, the extra water and electricity and all that additional expense now is getting balanced out a little bit more between the parents if you have a split
Someone
schedule.
is still spending a lot of money on child support, not getting credit for how much time they spend with the kid. So the parents are just, it'll be interesting to see how the courts actually deal with it.
Right.
Because it's supposed to take more effect into how much child support, but you might find that the courts just go, you know what, it's too difficult to figure out and I'm not gonna get involved in it. Or force the situation, you guys have to come to an agreement on this, which you've
Yeah, I've
found
done
as
that
well.
once or twice.
You know, this is too contentious for me, I don't wanna hear this in trial, you guys figure this out, and somehow the trial keeps getting pushed and pushed and pushed.
Yeah.
Okay, we're
So-
down to 1 minute here, so we're gonna recap all the secrets that Mr. Attorney Bartos gave us today. And one of them was File for your parental rights. Make sure you pay child support, because somebody can come back after you for 17 years of child support. And what else did we cover?
The pro se,
Go to the pro
help.
se office.
If you don't want, if you can't hire an attorney.
Ask
go
for
to
a
the
poverty
pro se.
affidavit. Don't let money stop you from getting your parental rights. So David, thanks for
Well,
being on
thank
our
you for
show.
having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great having you on. It's always nice to see you, and
Wonderful stuff.
yeah.
And we'll be back next month.
Thank you.